She thought she was in control. She believed her indifference could break you, that her silence would devour you from the inside. And that, like every other man, you would eventually come running back. But today, something changed. Today, you don't react, you don't chase, you don't ask, you don't appear. And that unsettles her because she can't understand what's happening. She can't stand not knowing if you still care. She can't accept that you've escaped the game she built. Now, the emptiness she once used against you becomes her own worst enemy. But this isn't luck. This is strategy. If you're watching this, it's because you're tired. Tired of giving more than you receive. Because you know you've been tested, ignored, measured, and you've finally decided not to react as expected. You're ready to do what very few men ever dare to do, to give no signs, no begging, no chasing. This isn't another game about manipulation. This is a guide to becoming what no one anticipates, a man who commands his presence, a man who decides when to speak and when to disappear, a man who doesn't move out of need, but out of power. You're about to see how silence, the same silence you once used as a shield, can become your most lethal weapon. How doing nothing can become so powerful that she starts to question everything. Who are you? What did she really feel for you? And why can't she stop thinking about you now? And the best part, you said nothing. Because the silence you use today is not weakness, it's war. It's your way of showing that not every man falls, that there's one who walked away without warning and whose absence spoke louder than 1,000 words. So listen carefully, because by the end of this video, you won't just know how to change the game, you'll learn to play an entirely different one. One where you decide, you set the pace, you hold the power. Before we continue, write this in the comments below. I punish with silence. Let the world see it. Let you remember it. She played her cards the same way she always does, withdrawing her attention little by little. Her replies came slower, her tone colder, her presence fainter. It wasn't open rejection, it was a slow, deliberate drip. She does this so you'll take the initiative, so you'll chase, because in her mind, that passive retreat always triggers one thing, your reaction. But this time, you didn't. And that single act, not responding, not chasing, not trying to fix anything, completely rewrites the script, because now she has nothing to play with. Instead of watching you beg, she watches you vanish. Instead of hearing, "Are you okay?" she hears silence, and that silence, though she'll never admit it, cuts deep. Because silence breaks the pattern, she expected you to be like all the others. Men who can't handle distance, who need constant reassurance, who crumble at the thought of losing her. But you did the one thing a woman who thrives on control fears the most. You said nothing. You didn't react. And with that silence, you said everything. The emptiness you left behind is not ordinary. It's the reflection of her fading significance. Because silence, when used with precision, isn't indifference. It's a mirror that shows her the truth, that her games no longer work, that her tactics no longer move you, that her presence no longer commands your emotions. And for someone who measures her worth through your reactions, that realization is a direct strike to the ego. Now, she starts checking her phone, watching your stories, waiting for a sign, any sign, that you've reacted. But there's nothing. No message, no attempt, no trace. And that's when the discomfort begins. Because if you don't react, what does that mean? That you don't care? That you've moved on? That you've forgotten her? That uncertainty, that quiet doubt, is more powerful than any words you could have spoken. You understand now. Silence isn't emptiness. It's provocation. It's strategy. It's a statement that you've stepped off her board, and she can no longer read your moves. Because the man who stays silent by choice becomes unpredictable. He creates mystery. He commands respect. And here's where it gets fascinating. When a man holds back, she starts projecting. She fills the silence with her own fears. Is he with someone else? Does he not care anymore? Has he found someone better? And the story she invents inside her mind is far more brutal than any truth you could ever tell her. She's not wrong for thinking you're no longer available. She's wrong for thinking that makes you any less dangerous. Because the man who doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't justify, is the man who leaves the deepest mark. And now you've realized something essential, that selective silence isn't absence, it's dominance. Instead of stepping into her emotional game, you created your own ground, a territory she cannot access, cannot control, cannot decode. And that's what truly unsettles her, not knowing. She can handle your anger, she can face your jealousy, she can even tolerate your complaints, but your silence? There's nothing for her to manipulate, no reaction to twist, no emotion to weaponize. And it's there, in that empty space where you no longer exist for her, that she begins to lose. The woman who once believed she could control you with distance now feels she's quietly lost you. Because that's what you do. You leave in silence, but the echo of your absence screams louder than any argument. While you rebuild your value in private, While you sharpen your focus and grow emotionally stronger, she starts to fall into a spiral. A spiral where pride fails, indifference loses its charm, and the silence you maintain leads her to one tormenting question. Did I really lose him? That doubt becomes her first punishment, and the first reason she starts searching for you again. Not out of love, not out of remorse, but out of need. She needs to feel that control again, the certainty she once had when you used to react. She needs the comfort of knowing she still matters. But now, it's too late. Because what you lost in her absence was need, and what you gained was mastery. Silence turned you into a mystery, a challenge, a shadow she can no longer possess, and in that transformation, you stopped being just another man. You became the memory that haunts her, the unfinished story she can't close, the man who vanished without warning and never looked back. And it all began with a single act, not reacting. She thought she knew the game, but your silence disarmed her. Now every move she makes is a desperate search for reaction, and you give none. You only leave questions, and the man who leaves questions is the one who's never forgotten. But there's more. Because now she doesn't just feel your absence, she studies it. She begins to talk about you with her friends, not as someone she lost, but as an enigma she could never solve. And that's what fuels her frustration, because in her mind, you were supposed to react, but you didn't. Not a step, not a gesture, not a message, nothing. And that drives her insane, because she knows she no longer has access to you. It doesn't matter how many signals she sends, how many subtle stories, vague messages, or quiet likes, you don't fall for it anymore. Because you've understood something powerful. Sometimes the strongest way to speak is to say nothing at all. Silence has a strange way of working. It doesn't shout, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand attention, it simply arrives quietly, and once it does, it begins to change everything around it. Not violently, but slowly, invisibly, lethally, because what begins as distance soon becomes an emotional crack. At first, she doesn't notice it. She still believes she's in control. She convinces herself your absence is temporary, that you're just acting, that you'll come back any moment now. But time passes, and you don't return, and something inside her begins to tremble. Her logic starts to fail, because in her mind, you should be chasing, you should be asking what went wrong, you should be trying to fix what you had, but you're not. And that silence, that lack of reaction, doesn't just confuse her, it infuriates her. Because if you're not reacting as she expected, then what does that make you? What kind of man are you? You're the one she can't control, the one who doesn't need her attention, the one who walks away and never looks back. That figure she once thought she could read now escapes her completely. You've become unpredictable, uncontrollable, indecipherable. And that's when she starts spinning, first slowly, then faster, because she needs to know. She needs to recover the frame of reference you shattered without uttering a single word. Your silence made you a threat, not because you hurt her, but because you broke the mold, and everything that breaks the mold becomes dangerous to those who lived comfortably inside it. You stopped being the man who followed the pattern. You became the mystery, and mysteries always create obsession. She starts thinking about you at the most unexpected moments, in the middle of an outing, before falling asleep, when she sees your name without notifications, when she checks your profile and finds no trace of you at all. Because everything you once were has faded, and now only the shadow remains, the shadow of the man who never came back. And the worst part for her isn't that you left, it's that she never saw it coming. Her entire psychological game was built upon your reactions, your anxiety, your need, your emotional patterns. But now, she has nothing. She can't predict you. She can't control you. She can't even tell if you still care or if you've already erased her completely. And that silence you hold, it isn't emptiness, it's chaos. Emotional chaos for her. Strategic peace for you. Because deep down, you know exactly what you're doing. You're not being passive, you're being precise. Every silence carries intention. You don't text because you don't need to. You don't reply because she's no longer a priority. You don't reappear because your absence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Your silence isn't indifference, it's construction. You're not reacting, you're building. building discipline, building mystery, building power, and she feels it. She feels that something has shifted, that you no longer orbit around her gravity, that your frequency has changed. While she's still chasing validation, you've become unreachable, because her attention no longer moves you, her behavior no longer directs you, her tests no longer define you. And that is the real victory. When the game she created no longer includes you. But pay attention, because this is where most men break. When she starts showing signs, a message, a casual "how are you," a like, a story posted just for you to see, they get excited. They think it's her return, that the silence worked, that they've won. But that's the trap. She doesn't come back for you. She comes back for clarity. She comes back because she can't stand the uncertainty, because her ego needs confirmation. And if you react, if you reply too quickly, if you show emotion, you destroy everything you built. Your silence isn't just a strategy, it's a wall that protects your progress, that reminds her she no longer has access without permission. And only if she dares to climb that wall, with clarity, with humility, with genuine intent, then you decide whether to open even the smallest crack. Because in this silent game, it was never about making her come back. It's about making sure you never lose yourself again. That's what this is all about. Understanding that your energy is not a gift for the ungrateful, that your time is sacred, that your worth doesn't depend on replies, validation, or presence, that your voice carries far more weight when you know when to stay silent. And as you rise, as you move in silence and rebuild, she begins to fall apart. Because she can't comprehend how she lost everything without a fight, without a goodbye, without a single word. There was only silence, and her world collapsed. That is the kind of power that cannot be taught in words, only shown through actions, through decisions, through absences that weigh more than presence. And she feels it. Deep down, she knows it. She lost a man who didn't just leave. She lost the one man who knew how to walk away without making a sound. Because the one who stays to argue is easy to read. The one who gets angry, who complains, who cries, is still there. But you vanished, without shouting, without explaining, without begging, and that marked her. Now she replays the moments in her mind, looking for signs that you did something wrong. But she finds nothing. Because the problem was never you. The problem was believing you'd never leave. And now you didn't just leave, you left transformed, colder, firmer, freer, and that, even if she never admits it, haunts her, because you no longer need her to return. And when you no longer need, everything either comes by itself or it doesn't. It doesn't matter. The human mind cannot tolerate emptiness. It needs to fill the void, to finish the story, to make sense of what was lost. And when you walked away, when you stopped replying, when you disappeared in silence, you created exactly that, a void. But this wasn't just any void. It wasn't indifference. It wasn't disinterest. It was something far deeper, an absence with intention. And that kind of absence, when executed with precision, doesn't hurt at first. It confuses, it unsettles, then it hurts, and after that, it obsesses. She begins to live with a question she cannot answer. Why? Why didn't he come back? Why didn't he react? Why didn't he insist? And that's where doubt is born. A quiet, insidious kind of doubt that doesn't scream, but doesn't let her sleep either. Because what torments her most isn't that you left, it's that she cannot understand why you didn't return. In her mind, she's seen this story before. She knows how it's supposed to end. You begging, you insisting, you trying to fix everything. But not this time. This time, the ending was different. This time, there was no ending, no closure, only silence. A silence that keeps expanding, spreading like a shadow through her thoughts, turning every memory of you into an unanswered question. And the mind cannot stand unanswered questions. She starts analyzing every detail. The last message, the last look, the last day you spoke. She searches for clues. Was it her fault? Did you say something? Did she miss a sign? But she finds nothing. And that disarms her completely, because if she can't identify what broke the connection, she begins to think maybe the problem was her. Maybe you were too composed. Maybe she wasn't enough. And that thought, that subtle insecurity, is the poison your silence planted, without a single word. Your silence becomes her inner judge, and suddenly, you're no longer just the man who left. You're the man who, through his absence, forced her to face what she never wanted to see about herself. That she's not as unforgettable as she thought, not as special as she believed, not as unique as her ego made her feel. Because you didn't leave with noise, you left with elegance. And that changes everything. The men who make scenes, who complain, who argue, they give her something to fight against. But you didn't. You didn't fight, you simply left. And that kind of departure cannot be processed. That's when her mind begins to build stories. He must be with someone else. Maybe I never mattered. Maybe I was the one who ruined everything. The doubt begins as a whisper, but over time it becomes a scream she cannot silence. She starts searching for you without admitting she's searching. She opens your profile, scrolls through your photos, reads your stories, checks for signs of someone new, reads comments, observes everything, but says nothing, because her pride won't let her ask. But her mind is already at war, and in that war, you do nothing. You send no signals, you leave no traces, you show no emotion. That control, that calm, destroys her, because she's always drawn power from her presence. But you've taught her something she'll never forget, that true power lies in absence. And the more time passes, the more her inner tension grows, the more she needs to know, the more she doubts everything she once felt certain about. Now she doesn't know if you'll ever return. She doesn't know if she ever truly had you. She doesn't even know if she lost something she ever really valued. And that's where the shift begins. She changes, from indifferent to intrigued, from controlling to insecure, from confident to confused. Because now, the entire mental framework she once used on you no longer works. And that makes her vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, you rise. Because while she's emotionally fragmenting, you're growing psychologically. You appear stronger, sharper, more untouchable. And in her mind, that confirms her deepest fear, that you've completely lost interest. The irony is brutal. The more she ignored you before, the more she desires you now that she can't have you. That's what doubt does. That's what silence does. That's what a man does when he knows when to stay silent. And the most fascinating part is, she still doesn't know. She doesn't know whether this was strategy or if you truly stopped caring. But that uncertainty, that gray in-between space, is what consumes her. Because if she at least knew you were hurt, she'd know there's still something to fix. If she knew you were angry, she'd have an emotion to work with. But there's nothing. Only silence. Silence. And certainty. The certainty that you no longer play her game. The certainty that, whether she admits it or not, you've already won. And there, in the storm you created by leaving quietly, a new reality is born for her, that not all men are the same. That some, like you, know how to walk away with power, without words, without noise, without seeking approval. And a man like that is never forgotten. Because there comes a point, a breaking point, where everything shifts, where she stops waiting for signs and starts searching for them, where she's no longer trying to control the story, she's trying to understand it, where her doubts begin to turn into action. That moment arrives when your absence becomes unbearable, when your silence stops being mere distance and turns into reality, when it's no longer that you're not talking, it's that you're truly gone, not on her screen, not in her messages, not in her world. And for someone who once fed on your attention, that is the real blow. She shifts from watching you to missing you, from controlling to wanting you, from playing to pleading. She won't do it openly. Her pride still holds her back. But the cracks begin to show. A casual message, a harmless comment masked as indifference, a memory thrown into the air. Today I passed by the place we went to. I heard that song you used to play. Do you remember? It all sounds innocent, but it's not. Every word she sends is loaded with an intention she won't admit. She wants to recover what she lost, without publicly accepting it. She wants to come back, but without stepping down from her pedestal. But you're not there anymore. You're no longer the man who needs validation. You're no longer waiting for that message. You no longer check her profile because you changed too. Your silence wasn't just a strategy, It was a transformation. A transition from a man who was emotionally exposed to a man who became emotionally armored. And she can feel it. She notices it. In your calm, in your lack of reaction, in the way you speak, in the way you move, in how now you are the one setting the terms. And she feels it. And it hurts. Because the game is no longer hers. She may try to come back, but now there are no guarantees. She doesn't know if you'll respond, if you're still available, if that message will even be seen. And that fear consumes her, because you've gone from being her certainty to being her unknown. And in love, the unknown is addictive. Now she's the one analyzing every word, reading between every line, wondering if she's doing the right thing, questioning if she lost something she can never get back. And maybe she did, because the man who learned to stay silent also learned to listen to his own worth. He learned the difference between what excites him and what's good for him. He learned to prioritize himself. And for a man who once measured his value through how others reacted, that's pure evolution. You no longer crave attention. You no longer seek approval. You're no longer trapped. Now you have control. And in that control, you decide whether to respond or not, to open the door or leave it closed, to let her in or continue walking forward. Because when she begins to beg, you're no longer begging for anything. That's true detachment, when the opportunity returns and you're no longer interested. And that's the difference between the man who learned and the man who only pretended to be fine. The one who pretended collapses when she reappears. He runs, he replies, he accepts crumbs. But not you. You're no longer that man. You're not waiting for validation. You're choosing peace. You're choosing focus. You're choosing evolution. Because throughout this entire process, while she was playing with your attention, you were building your mind, building your focus, building your goals. And now, it shows. She can see it in your eyes, in your energy, in the way you no longer try to be part of her world, because you've built your own. And that world no longer needs her presence to have value. And that desperates her, because she thought she could come back whenever she wanted. She thought that just showing up would make everything orbit around her again. But not this time. This time, you learned the lesson. This time, you chose power. You chose respect. You chose dignity. And that's what makes her, for the first time, feel what you once felt: insecurity. She doesn't know if she's losing her last chance. She doesn't know if you're with someone else. She doesn't know if you still think of her, or if you've already stopped, and that mental storm makes her move. Sometimes with a direct message, sometimes with a disguised apology, sometimes with an open proposal. But now, it's too late, because you understood something vital. When someone loses you by underestimating you, they don't deserve to get you back out of convenience. That kind of return isn't accepted. It's only observed from afar. And here's the shift. Now she's in your place. She's the one checking her phone, waiting for a sign, making mental plans, calculating the perfect moment to reach out. Because the silence you once used as a shield now weighs on her as punishment. Everything has changed. Now she's the one chasing. She's the one waiting. She's the one who doesn't understand what happened. And you're simply fine. That's how you become untouchable. Not because you don't feel, not because you don't care, not because you're made of stone, but because you learned what most men never do, that you don't need to chase to have value, that you don't need presence to hold power. She thought she could handle it. She thought you'd come back. She thought this was temporary, but it wasn't. Because your silence wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. It was a decision, a declaration of emotional independence, an act of self-respect. And now look at you. You're no longer at war with yourself. You no longer ask what you did wrong. You no longer wait for her message. You no longer check her profile, because you don't need any of that anymore. While she was searching for attention, you found direction. And that's real power. The power to disappear without resentment, to stay silent without losing dignity, to not return and not regret it. And that kind of power can never be forgotten. She might keep searching for you in memories. She might try to reconnect with soft words. She might even whisper that she misses you, but you'll know something she never did. That true power isn't found in what you fight to keep, but in what you choose to let go. And you let go. You let go with honor. You let go with class. You let go with strength. And that's why now, you're something else. You're not just an ex, you're not just another option. You're the man who marked a before and after. While others play with emotions, you're building your empire. This channel, Scientia, is not for those who crave attention. It's for those who crave power, self-mastery, vision, strategic coldness. And if you've made it this far, it's not by accident. It's because you're ready to keep growing, ready to leave behind what doesn't serve you, ready to become the kind of man no one dares to lose, ready to take the next step. So now, comment below, I am untouchable. Write it, say it, own it, because that's what you are from this moment on. And if you want to keep walking this path, if you want deeper, more exclusive, more strategic content, join as a channel member. Subscribe now, share this video, and stay firm, because she knows it, and you know it too. Now, you have the control. Yeah.